It was the brightest movie of 3 years ago, where different storylines eventually merged together, each evoking endless fear. Let's delve into the mystery of this movie. The story begins with an old man tending to his camels in the desert. Suddenly, the camels sensed something amiss and fled the area. A mysterious object appeared in front of the old man, 9 meters away. Curiously, he approached to find a semi-transparent sphere in the dust, slowly darkening as the dust cleared. Just as he was about to touch the sphere, a sharp noise emanated from it, followed by the arrival of a powerful special forces team in a nearby village. Reports indicated that a Middle Eastern town was facing an unknown terrorist attack. Upon their arrival, they found the bustling town eerily deserted, with the lively market devoid of any sound and an unsettling atmosphere prevailing. However, the television sets on the roadside continued to flicker, and soon, distressed villagers emerged. They revealed themselves as victims of the recent events, but even as they recounted their stories to the soldiers remained vigilant. A veiled woman informed the soldiers of the recent occurrences and pleaded for the rescue of the children in the school. The soldiers hurried to surround the school without any let up. Upon entering the classroom, they found the children huddled in fear in a corner, with the other side of the room blasted to pieces. Among them, James observed a peculiar boy drawing circles with his nosebleed on the desk, prompting James to approach him. The friendly gesture seemed to calm the boy, who then gestured towards the direction of the shattered wall. James cautiously proceeded there and encountered a cloud of dust, leading the soldiers to rush towards the dust cloud for investigation. As they cautiously entered the debris, the communication devices suddenly emitted a piercing sound, causing James to hurriedly remove them. Simultaneously, the ground began to tremble, intensifying as dust filled the air, and in an instant, the entire team disappeared into the dust cloud. James's calls went unanswered, prompting him to realize something strange and guide his remaining companion towards a bright light. However, the shocking sight that unfolded left everyone present incredulous, clearly exceeding their understanding. This was not a mountain, but a living organism. At this point, they were completely dumbfounded. Clearly, the scene before them was beyond their comprehension. However, their bullets seemed to have no effect on the organism. James seemed to have noticed something, and suddenly, the organism released a huge shockwave. The scene then shifted to a small town in the United States, where a peculiar large crater appeared in a cornfield, with a group of crows circling above, indicating the presence of decaying bodies in the pit. The sheriff hurried over to investigate but found nothing tangible, although the deep pit was peculiar with rows of cornstalks neatly laid around it, resembling an impact from a meteorite rather than human excavation. Nearby, they discovered a discarded car with unfinished drinks and the driver's wallet inside. Suddenly, a swarm of dark locusts attacked them from the front. With no windshield on the vehicle, the sheriff shielded his head with his hands, but the locusts' attack was inevitable. Fortunately, the deputy pulled the sheriff out of the car, saving them. It appeared that all the unusual events were hinting at a major event about to occur. What secrets lay within this circular crater? Meanwhile, a female teacher was passionately conducting a music performance when suddenly, a drop of blood trickled from the girl's nose. This phenomenon repeated with multiple children in the classroom, causing chaos. The hospital soon filled with affected children, and after work, upon hearing the news, Carrie located her own children. The principal informed her that only her son did not experience the nosebleed incident. Investigations revealed that the event was not caused by food poisoning, leaving them clueless about the cause. Back at home, Carrie watched TV with her children when the screen started flickering briefly due to a power outage, followed by restoring normalcy. A news report played on TV, showing animals running wild in the city. Strange occurrences continued to unfold, leaving Carrie puzzled. Her son then discovered her husband's phone showing his location outside the city. Carrie followed the location and arrived at a residential area, where she found clear evidence of her husband's infidelity. When her husband returned home, Carrie confronted him, leading to a heated argument, after which the cutlery started shaking, and the lights flickered in the house. Frightened, they crouched under the table, before hearing their children's terrified screams and quickly running upstairs. As Carrie held her daughter by the window, they witnessed a raging fire outside. This was a sudden and unexpected attack, with some speculating it was an explosion while others believed a tornado had struck. The streets had turned into ruins, leaving everyone curious and at a loss about what to do, especially since their communication devices were out of service. A sharp-eyed passerby noticed why Carrie's house was untouched, leading neighbors to suspect her involvement in the attack. As confusion reigned, Carrie's son was heard screaming in pain, holding his head in agony as he repeatedly begged for the torture to stop. After some time, he calmed down, revealing that he had been hearing someone speaking to him continuously. More strange occurrences unfolded, leaving everyone puzzled. Meanwhile, in Japan, a spacecraft carrying 3 people was about to launch in 10 minutes, causing tension as they prepared for the impending launch. As the thrusters ignited successfully, the massive spacecraft ascended into the sky, gradually leaving the Earth's atmosphere amid cheers from onlookers. 10 hours later, as the spacecraft navigated in its designated orbit, the astronauts noticed something approaching slowly in outer space. Suddenly, a loud noise resounded as the spacecraft collided with an unknown object. Back at home, Nanny received an urgent call and rushed to the command center, only to witness the final footage sent back by the spacecraft. A large hole had appeared in the center of the spacecraft. Nanny entered the operations room and discovered the last audio recording before the spacecraft encountered the accident, repeatedly uttering 2 words. The news of the spacecraft disaster spread across the island, plunging its inhabitants into mourning. Simultaneously, in London, a school group on a field trip passed through a valley when all their mobile signals abruptly dropped, causing chaos in the vehicle. Amidst the confusion, an unidentified flying object appeared ahead, prompting the teacher to make a sudden turn that unfortunately led the bus to careen off the road and plunge into a deep pit. A school bus plummeted off a cliff. To everyone's surprise, the children emerged unscathed. However, their escape from the deep chasm they fell into was no easy feat. Led by a blonde boy, they began climbing the cliff face, with the lead boy making it halfway up before exhaustion set in. Surveying the abyss below and then his classmates at the bottom, he gestured for them to climb up as well. Following his lead, the other children immediately sprang into action, gradually making their way to safety. Upon reaching the top, they discovered that the road destroyed by the falling object was not a meteorite, but rather a Russian satellite. Intrigued by the satellite's fall, Thomas observed remnants at the crash site that matched those in his sketchbook, leaving him bewildered by his prescience. Meanwhile, following an attack on their town that night, Carrie hastily fled with her husband and children. After a night of travel, they finally arrived in the city, only to find it strangely abnormal. As they exited the car to investigate, streetlights began to flicker off one by one, only to be restored the following day. While Carrie shopped at the supermarket, she caught a news broadcast reporting mysterious attacks happening nationwide and a devastating assault sweeping globally. Deep in thought, Carrie made a quick decision to steal another person's car keys, not having time to explain to her husband, instructing him to gather their belongings. The family embarked on a survival journey without delay. After a day of hectic travel, they checked into a hotel. When the children turned on the television, breaking news revealed that the recent global attacks were attributed to extraterrestrial beings. Further confirmatory signs indicated that events were spiraling out of control. Just now, he was knocked down by a powerful sound wave, looking around in confusion as he could hardly believe that extraterrestrial beings had turned the area into a wasteland. Hastily, he headed to the combat vehicle to call for backup, only to realize that the radio communication was already down. As he continued walking, the scorching sun had left him famished and thirsty, eventually causing him to collapse. In a daze, he spotted a person approaching him, leading him to instinctively raise his gun in alarm, only to find out that the elderly individual meant no harm. Despite the language barrier, the elder quickly tossed a water bottle towards him, which he hesitantly drank from before inquiring if the man had seen any American soldiers like himself. The clever elder then arranged 7 tree branches on the ground, matching the number of James's team, and decided to guide him through the vast desert. When they could barely move forward, the elder suddenly shouted in excitement, claiming the others were up ahead. Following closely, James was left utterly shocked to find out that the elder had been leading him in search of goats. However, just then, his locator received a faint signal, guiding him to a town and eventually to a hospital. Although cautious upon entering the hospital, he discovered an injured teammate in the basement. Carrying the teammate to the vehicle, tragedy struck as the teammate ceased to breathe. Arriving at the former U.S. military base, he was surprised to find it deserted, without a well-equipped special forces unit that had simply disappeared into thin air. Attempting to radio headquarters for communication, he was met with silence, fueling his anger. Venturing outside to scavenge for supplies, he had a sudden realization that the command center might hold vital clues. After diligent searching, he discovered a burnt classified report, indicating that the team had encountered an attack from extraterrestrial beings, prompting an immediate evacuation. However, as the invasion of Earth by extraterrestrial beings reached its climax, the human race found themselves facing a formidable enemy. The humans were left with the daunting question of their next move in the presence of these colossal adversaries. Powerful alien beings invaded Earth, leaving Kelly trembling in fear as she ventured outside alone. She quickly hopped into an off-road vehicle, only to find it out of fuel and unable to start. Grabbing a handgun from the ground, she hurried back, too worried to buy food. Exhausted, Kelly finally made it back to her neighbor's house, calling out for family members but receiving no response. Suddenly, she noticed the walls covered in strange black liquid, causing her to panic. As she stumbled over a dead dog on the floor, she frantically backed away, unable to believe the eerie events unfolding within minutes of her departure. Just as she feared for her family's safety, a hand reached down and pulled Kelly up to the attic. To her relief, her husband and child were alive. Embracing her family joyfully, their reunion was interrupted by a warning from an elderly person. The old person cautioned that making noise would attract the monsters and jeopardize everyone's survival. Despite the warning, Kelly refused to sit idly by and carried her daughter downstairs. The alien beings were close by, and after a tense moment of silence, they quietly moved to another room. With her husband and son still upstairs, Kelly peered out again, signaling her husband to come down as the monsters were not nearby. Quickly bringing their son downstairs, they reached a stalemate when conflicting opinions on direction arose. Kelly wanted them to move in a different direction, while her husband insisted on opening a blocked door. But the sudden appearance of an alien monster near her husband forced her to act. Seeing the creature approaching him, she desperately yelled a warning, but fearing to alert the child, she refrained from speaking loudly. The monster suddenly lunged at her husband, diverting her attention as she picked up the handgun. Taking her children, Kelly ran frantically to the basement. They managed to climb out of a window and fled to their car. However, their nervousness caused the wheels to skid, preventing their escape. Just then, an alien monster jumped onto the car window, creating a large hole. In desperation, she fired several shots at the monster, but the bullets seemed ineffective. She then grabbed a golf club from the back of the car and stabbed at the monster's mouth, yet still failing to cause substantial harm. Finally, she pulled out a black stone from her child's bag, realizing it might be the creature's weakness. Acting out of desperation, she charged at the monster with the stone, and soon defeated it. Holding the black stone, Kelly finally regained her composure. Pushing the creature off the car, she was surprised to see her husband, who had survived, walking out slowly. Hastening over to him, the family narrowly escaped the monster's attack and embarked on their survival journey once again. What adventures lie ahead for them? Alien beings attack humans, and the global situation becomes increasingly dire with bodies scattered everywhere, including that of a dead alien. James, who has been through multiple wars, is startled by this strange scene. Nervously scanning the surroundings, he hopes to find survivors. Just then, he hears voices nearby and cautiously approaches to find several refugees hiding. Instructing the refugees to raise their hands and lift their clothes to show no threat, James discovers they can understand English and claim no ill intent. He approaches them and learns they have survived an alien attack where various armed vehicles and helicopters were destroyed, with all planes burned at the US military base following a gunfight. The refugees mention that the Kabul airport nearby is the only option for flying out. James then drives them to the airport, where he successfully boards a plane after presenting his US military identification. Meanwhile, Thomas and his group stop a car on the road, learning from the driver that London has been attacked by unknown creatures, resulting in the loss of his family. After pleading, a woman takes them back to London, only to find the city devastated by smoke. While Thomas and others head home separately, they encounter an alien creature searching for food without noticing them. Rushing back home, Thomas discovers his family had already perished. At the London transit station, James is informed by a sergeant that there are no flights back to the US, leaving him stuck in London, shocked by the city's smoke-filled state and worried about his family. Unable to reach anyone on the phone, James despairs and loses hope for life, finding solace in a bar where he unexpectedly encounters Thomas. Thomas asks James to escort him to the hospital, although James is feeling low. Thomas then reveals his ability to control the alien beings, which James initially doubts. To prove his claim, Thomas shows James a sketch of the alien mothership he saw in the desert. Thomas explains his epilepsy allows him to sense the alien signals. Realizing the gravity of the situation, James hurries to escort Thomas to the hospital, leading to a monster attack at the medical facility upon their arrival. This boy is extraordinary, he can actually predict the future. After experts conduct tests upon discovering the anomaly, they find trillions of neurons frantically firing within his brain, emitting countless patterns and even speaking alien languages. Just as he predicts the impending arrival of aliens, real extraterrestrial beings indeed begin approaching the hospital. Chaos erupts at the hospital, and under James's protection, the group quickly begins evacuating. Before long, James notices monsters outside the window. Thomas informs James that the aliens have spotted them, and soon, a person outside the window gets attacked. They are all terrified and then the monster shatters the glass, ruthlessly killing a woman nearby. The three flee immediately, but Thomas pauses upon sensing the monster on the opposite side. In silence, James awakens him and decides to lock the child in a room while staying back to confront the threat alone. The monsters soon launch an attack, and James fiercely uses a nearby fuel can to launch flames at them. Meanwhile, Thomas, inside the house, feels the aliens' pain. Despite feeling excited by using fire to repel the monsters, James experiences an influx of creatures rushing towards them. The monsters quickly move in their direction, and one even burrows through the ceiling toward Thomas's room. James is forced to open the door and lead the group and escape, with a monster closely following them like a shadow. Wherever they go, it follows. Within moments, they become surrounded by several monsters. James shoots at one of the creatures with no effect, prompting them to adopt a defensive stance with a knife as their only weapon. As they await the monster's final strike, Kelly arrives at a shelter with her injured husband and children, encountering a familiar doctor. After tending to her husband's injury, Kelly and the doctor find themselves in a crowded hall filled with disaster-stricken refugees. As her husband's wound is treated, she and the male doctor engage in an affair, neglecting their responsibilities. Meanwhile, their son roams unattended, accidentally stumbling into a morgue. Returning from her tryst, Kelly witnesses her son using the black stone in his hand to fend off the sticky residue left behind by the alien beings. The family is immediately apprehended by the military and the black stone is subjected to research. Upon discovering the stone's ability to halt regeneration, the military concludes that both the child and the stone are key to saving humanity. In a bid to protect humanity, Kelly and her family board a military vehicle towards the Pentagon, but are unexpectedly ambushed en route by unknown assailants who appear to be after the black stone. Their vehicle is shot out, resulting in a rollover, leading to a fierce shootout between both sides. Seizing the opportunity, Kelly's husband crawls out of the wreckage to ensure their safety, eventually retrieving their child. However, before Kelly flees, she manages to take the black stone. The family escapes into the woods, with Kelly's husband attempting negotiation with the enemies but tragically losing his life. Kelly continues to flee with her two children towards the forest, unintentionally tumbling down the mountain in the process. This magical black stone, when held by the woman, causes the countless black sticky substances to rapidly dissipate. However, the sheer amount of the black substance causes her dizziness, with two children by her side. She cautiously continues forward, while at the hospital, James is locked in a final struggle with the alien monsters alongside the two children. At that moment, Thomas has an epileptic seizure as he attempts to control the extraterrestrial beings, which causes the monsters to gradually halt their movements. Witnessing this scene, James is left in awe at the realization that Thomas can indeed control the alien creatures. Thomas is finally successful in his attempt and James carries him swiftly towards the hospital. Meanwhile, in Japan, following an attack on a spacecraft by the space agency, a survivor is discovered outside in space, who happens to be Nanako's girlfriend. Using a breaststroke swim, the survivor swims back to the damaged spacecraft and quickly sends a distress signal to Earth. Upon hearing the distress call, Nanako rushes into the control room to establish communication with her girlfriend. However, her girlfriend's responses are ambiguous, initially mentioning the presence of aliens and later asking Nanako to save her. People start to doubt the authenticity of the communication, suspecting it to be a synthetic voice mimicking humans, possibly a disguise by aliens. Subsequently, the military swiftly targets and launches a nuclear weapon towards the signal direction, resulting in a massive light ring in the sky descending slowly and ultimately landing in the Amazon rainforest, marking a victorious dawn for humanity. James emerges as the brightest hero, with people jubilantly celebrating in the streets, some even taking up sticks to retaliate against aliens in remembrance of the deceased. However, James appears slightly disheartened, and the military dispatches helicopters to investigate the alien spacecraft, suiting up in protective gear and slowly entering the ship's interior. Following the victorious confrontation with the aliens, Kelly returns to her undamaged home with her 2 children, single-handedly raising them, while Nanako embarks on her journey. James opts to leave the military to lead a normal life, leaving only Thomas, who remains in a vegetative state after his epileptic incident. However, just when humanity lowers its guard, suddenly, an alien spacecraft appears in the sky, and thus concludes the first season of Invasion.